Hello and welcome to the channel. In this last part of the three-part series on Richard Rorty's book Philosophy and the Mirror of Nature, the aim is to show in which direction Rorty sees the development of philosophy. This time, philosophy is not a super science, but a discipline that finds its role in a social context. These videos represent a personal understanding of Rorty's philosophy. Anything that is not clearly said or you think may not be correctly interpreted, write in the comments. All suggestions come in handy, whether it is about the topics we are talking about or technical things about the video itself and YouTube. As we have seen before, Rorty's attack on epistemology and correspondence theory takes away from philosophy what has been considered its role since its inception, which is to find solid foundations for theorizing about the world, namely foundations which usually metaphysical category were the product of the attitude that the world and the thinking about the world in general can be reduced to a single theoretical pattern. That is, there is only one correct picture of the world, one method, and one theory of the world, thus one truth and one form of knowledge. This obsession of philosophy to have a reductionist attitude is related to its method, which was just that, too formal and reductionist, and inconsiderate to the variety of content that was given to her to analyze and observe. The theory of correspondence, and thus concepts of truth and knowledge, dependent on the agreement of purely formal theoretical prerequisites with things in the world. The agreement was reflected in the relationship between the subject and the object, or the one who observes the world by means of the general categories given in his spirit, and then these categories were applied on the world. This theoretical approach is firstly very dangerous because it clearly raises the question of how it is even possible to arrive at these rules by which the spirit operates. But as we tried to show in the last episode, the idea that there is a spirit arose because philosophers thought that thinking must be a special category, special for man. The whole confusion was caused by the attitude of philosophy and intellectuals toward reducing everything to solid foundations, which are there to explain the world. So it's no wonder that a lot of traditional philosophy is very similar to theology in its teaching and methods of proving or leading a narrative about something. In fact, sometimes we can ask ourselves, at least in some philosophical teachings, what is the difference between philosophy and theology? The excuse about the rationality of philosophy is just a fairy tale that philosophers use to justify itself and set itself apart from other disciplines and science. Rorty is an intellectual or a type of intellectual who radically criticizes the entire history of philosophy or the history of its method. But the reason for this are simple. People and intellectuals in the West have forgotten that philosophy and other disciplines are the product of a society, or rather needs of that society. The reason why one form of conceptualization existed in one historical period is related to the entire historical, cultural, intellectual, economical context in which it happened. Epistemology and correspondence theory are only a reflection of the reductionist attitude that philosophy has cultivated. The rationality she's preaching is just another form of thinking, one form or one interpretation of the world made in a certain historical context. At this moment, I would like to touch on what I have already hinted in a previous video, namely, the title of postmodernist that is imposed on Rorty is not very clear. What exactly does it mean to be a postmodernist? If it means that there is a plurality of opinion in the world, that is correct. If we think by that term that everything is possible, then interpretation is not right. The term relativism has become a weapon used by foundational orientated thinkers, namely thinkers who believe that there are solid forms or norms that cannot be wrong. Rorty does not think that there are solid foundations on which every form of thought is built, nor does he believe that every form of thought is equally valid, but he believes that there can be more opinions about world and that we can consider them correct. Thus, for Rorty, we should move from the idea of epistemology to hermeneutics, from systemic philosophy to edifying philosophy. That is, to combine different opinions and talk about them, to mix all the vocabularies available to us, thereby creating a dialogue between different vocabularies or way of speaking about the world. In addition to edifying, philosophy for Rorty should create a dialogue with the world and all the differences that exist in the world. Rorty is a pragmatist on the question how the dialogue will be carried out because it depends on the participants in the dialogue, because it is also up to them, the participants, to choose the tools with which they will describe the world. We create the world by choosing vocabulary from which we give certain reasons for that world or for that picture of the world. That is the reasons why we choose these particular vocabularies. For Rorty, philosophy cannot escape from the fact that it must have a certain social role, and Rorty tries to give philosophy that role. Philosophy is not a sermon from Sunday Mass, it is a form of intellectual activity that is carried out because that there are certain social problems that need to be responded to. Thank you for listening and staying until the end of this short series. All comments, whether positive or negative, that you have on the topic are welcome. I hope that the technical side will improve over time. I would also like to announce the next projects that can be expected on the channel soon, namely 2 essays on Hilary Putnam and Ludwig Wittgenstein. 2 videos are planned for Wittgenstein, one with a topic related to artificial intelligence and the other with the goal of connecting Wittgenstein's teaching with something that will leave as a little surprise. Thanks for staying and see you in the next video.